Live from parts unknown, you're listening to Simon Miller's Pro Wrestling Podcast, the only wrestling podcast on the planet, we think. Sit back, relax, prepare for positivity to run through your veins as Simon Miller gives you your weekly dose of powerful pro wrestling audio. It is Miller Time.
Hello and welcome to Simon's Pro Wrestling Podcast. My name is Simon Miller, and yes, this is a pro wrestling podcast. Thank you very much for joining me for the second episode this week, which means if you haven't heard the episode that dropped on Wednesday, get in your time machine, go back to then, and especially if you want to hear about Dean Ambrose. We'll be touching on the Dean Ambrose stuff today, but that is the one where we dived in deep because it was the day that WWE released a big statement on their website, or at least 12 hours or so removed, saying that yes, post-WrestleMania 35, it looks like potentially, I mean, you know, it could still be a work, we don't know, that Dean Ambrose is going. What we will talk about here is that seems to have triggered this bizarre wave when it does come to All Elite Wrestling. But anyway, we'll get to it. If you've never heard the podcast before, or if you're maybe just getting loose to it, the second episode of the week always features a patron. And I'm very happy and I'm very proud to say that a man who supported me for a long time is in a good egg all round is my man Tom. Tom, how you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Good to be back on the podcast.
Absolutely, dude. It's been a while. We were saying before, it's been a while. And, now you come back to the podcast and the wrestling world is utterly different to when last time we chatted. Wrestling was just kind of like, yeah, wrestling's all right, but status quo and everything's kind of the same. And now it's like, well, wrestling's really weird. Like, you don't know what's going to happen at all, ever.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, the last 6 months or so, it was a bit. I've kind of drifted out a little bit.
I think most people did, yeah.
But and I think a lot of people did. But it's picking back up again now. Oh, it's WrestleMania season, isn't it? So,
well, the thing that surprised me the most is like I always caveat this because I do totally agree with it. When it comes to things like ratings, I don't think fans have to care because what difference does it make? You know, it makes no difference. However, I was surprised. You know, I was surprised how I don't say they weren't bad, but how not good. This is my positive spin. The ratings for Raw and SmackDown I thought were quite low this week, given it was the Raw Rumble. Now, I find it fascinating from a statistic point of view because, you know, it is a good barometer into sort of interest in the product. And I know in terms of finances, it makes no difference, but I'm always the first person to put my hand up and go, I think YouTube must be affecting the number a little bit because you go on WWE's YouTube channel and some clips have done 1 million views and you think, well, if you add 1 million people. So I think I understand revenue-wise it doesn't help and you can't focus on YouTube, but I always do think that's kind of taking bites out of the bottom line. With that said, though, you know, I thought the Royal Rumble was decent. I thought it had some good talking points, and for them to kind of come out with both Raw. I mean, SmackDown basically did exactly the same as it did last week, and Raw didn't break 3 million, which is what I assumed it would do. I don't know. It just surprised me. It just did, and it kind of made me think, you know. Because I think you're probably the same as me. We both live in the bubble world of wrestling. I don't really know actually how popular it is outside of that because I live in it all the time. So I don't know what other people think about pro wrestling right now.
Yeah, no, neither do I. I mean, I do think the YouTube thing certainly doesn't help. I mean, I'm fully prepared to admit I'm one of those people. I do not watch Raw or SmackDown.
Yeah.
I just catch up with the highlights on YouTube because it's just so much easier.
Yeah, of course.
And, you know, if you need to devote, an extra 5 hours a week to Raw and SmackDown, and they're not necessarily always the best show. I mean, I just don't have time for that. So I don't think, ratings don't really matter these days. I mean, everything's been diluted by the internet anyway. So I don't think they really need to pay much attention to the ratings for Raw and SmackDown. But I would have expected it to be bigger, given it's the show after the Royal Rumble. But, you know,
I think there has to be a
difference.
Yeah, I think there has to be an element of burnout too. Because, you know, if you are super into this, you have to watch 3 hours of around about 3 hours of TakeOver, then 6 hours at the Rumble, then 3 hours of Raw, and 2 hours of SmackDown. By the time that Tuesday rolls around, you got to have somebody that's just like, I can't do it. Especially like when you say, you know, that you can just go on Twitter or YouTube or Facebook, whatever, and you can catch up. Or, you know, I know it's a funny, but you can watch shows like Ups and Downs. Like, you know, Ups and Downs yesterday went on for 14 minutes. So you can actually get your 2 hours. You can learn everything that's happened. And yeah, it's not the same as watching it, of course, but you can stay up to date by just, again, you know, shrinking your time down so much. And I think in these big weekends where, you know, these big 4 weekends where they do just so much content, I do think it wears people out. I mean, I'm lucky in the sense that I get to do it for stuff like this, but you know, like you say, when you just need to find time in your daily life to do any kind of thing, to have to try and watch, 12 hours plus of wrestling is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a whole day pretty much to watch, and the Royal Rumble was exhausting to watch. I mean, I stayed up and watched because I knew if I was working at 2:00 the next day in the afternoon, and I knew that I probably wouldn't be able to watch the whole thing if I got up at. Well, started watching it at 9:00, say. So I wouldn't be able to watch it all and do everything I need to do. So I had to stay up and watch some of it the night before. So I stayed up till about 3. I think I watched up to the Daniel Bryan match, and then I watched the rest later. And that was about 6 hours, I think, altogether. No, I didn't watch any of the pre-show either.
Well, no, that's the real problem with the pre-show, isn't it? Like, why would you watch it anyway? Especially when you think, well, that's going to add 2 extra hours to my life.
Yeah, and it used to only be like an hour, I swear. Now it's basically a show in itself.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that about waking up early, because I remember the Royal Rumble, it's probably 3 or 4 years ago now. But yeah, I remember exactly what you said. I got up early before work because I wanted to squeeze it in before I went to work. And you could do it, right? You had to get up quite early, but you could get pretty much the whole show. I mean, you kind of fast forward it at little things, but you could get it in. You could go to work feeling quite happy with yourself. You're so true. Unless you get up at like 3 in the morning when the show's still going on, there's no way you can fit it all in before you go.
Yeah, I'd have to start watching it at like, I don't know, 7 at the earliest, probably. I think. And I can't physically do that because I've got other things I need to do. But yeah, it's just, they're so long these days. Yeah. It just doesn't need to be that long. But then when you've got to squeeze in 2 Royal Rumble matches, I kind of understand that. But in some ways, it's nice to have such a long show, but it is a bit too much.
I think 6 hours is too much. I don't mind them doing 6 hours for what I do, but I understand them doing that for Mania. But to me, 4 hours max for the Rumble, 3 hours... for other pay-per-views. And now I watched that Royal Rumble and I was like, this is how sort of indoctrinated I've become. I was like, how did they ever even get a Royal Rumble to 3 hours? Do you know what I mean? A pay-per-view. Like, how the hell did they ever do that? Because it just seems so packed these days. That almost seems like a time that we've forgotten.
It's not like... There weren't even that many matches, were there, on the Rumble, to be fair?
No, there was 6. There was 9. But yeah, 2 and 3 were in the pre. Yes, it's about 6. There wasn't that many. Right, there wasn't that many.
The main show.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, and I don't remember. I think previous Rumbles you'd maybe get when it back in the day when it was just the men's Rumble, you'd maybe get a title match, and maybe 3 others, maybe.
Yeah. If that.
Not that different.
No, I remember those.
Yeah.
I remember those Royal Rumble shows. Kind of. I remember, aside from the odd one, like, Royal Rumble 2000 or whatever, I remember those shows literally just focusing on the Rumble. That's all all that mattered. And everything else was kind of just there because we need to fill out a card. And I've got no problem with, there being a bigger focus on other matches. In fact, I think that's really important. But I think we've gone too far the other way. And this is why, again, the thing that I would like the most is just kind of unify the world titles in terms of the women's and the men's world titles. Because all of a sudden, you eliminate 2 matches. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I liked every match on there. But again, the AJ Styles Daniel Bryan is the big one that I wanted to focus on because that was a brilliant match, but it just was terrible in context of where it fell on the card.
Oh, totally agree. Yeah, it was. To be honest, I watched it. Even I was a little bit bored because I just watched the Rumble, the women's Rumble, which was decent. And the whole crowd was just deflated.
Yeah, exactly. And I do think that, it always comes through the TV as well. Like, we're all human beings. So even if you are watching it on TV, you're going to feel worn out. But also, it's weird. It's like it transports itself out the TV into a living room, right? And all of a sudden the fan feel a bit worn out as well.
Yeah.
So,
I think that, but I think you inevitably get that with a 6-hour show. I mean, the fans have been there. By the time they got to the Daniel Bryan match, the fans have been there probably 6 hours.
Oh man, absolutely, dude. Especially because usually you get there early, don't you? Like that's the thing you do. You get to an arena early, you kind of settle in.
So if they'd have been there, so if it started at 10 o'clock our time, say, By the time they got to that Daniel Bryan match, it was 3:00 UK time.
That's crazy, isn't it? It's just crazy.
And I was ready for bed by then.
Well, of course, yeah, because you're worn out. Like, and I get the time zone's never going to help, but still, that is you're right. It becomes a slog. I think is the right word, and it shouldn't do. And that's the real shame as well, because you do get these matches which are great, but again, you don't enjoy them because you're so tired.
Yeah, and it always seems to be the SmackDown title match as well.
Well, that's because they don't put it on the same level as it's their classic thing, isn't it? Ever since day one, whoever was SmackDown champion was quote unquote the B champion.
Exactly,
which is ridiculous.
It's always the one that has to follow like a Rumble or something big, a bit like the Money in the Bank ladder match or something. It always follows that, and it's like, oh,
yeah, no, it's
never
true.
Gets the credit it deserves.
No, it's true, and it was that Daniel Bryan match was absolutely in the quote unquote death spot, as they say, because you're coming off this angle that's really hot. Everyone really likes it. Finally got what you wanted, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I don't know, but
I didn't get the ending to that match either. Really,
which one?
The Daniel Bryan match with Eric Rowan.
Recyclable Rowan. No, it was...
strange.
It was strange. I think it was just one of the... I'm kind of torn on it because it was madness, but at the same time, we all, as wrestling fans... And I get it, I kind of say this through gritted teeth and devil's advocate, pinch of salt and all of that, but everybody was asking for twists and turns and surprises... And that doesn't work really as an argument because the surprise still has to be good. I'm not saying this was bad. I need to see how it plays out. But, in terms of shocking you, this was a shock.
It was. I mean, I guess it means the end of the Bludgeon Brothers.
I don't know. I think Luke Harper's going to come back now at the Elimination Chamber and help Daniel Bryan win. And then we've got our new Wyatt family that just happens to want to make sure that you put plastic in the right part of your bin. That's what I think we're going to get. I love it though. I tell you, man, I wasn't sure on this whole, because again, it's very easy from from afar to criticize the Daniel Bryan gimmick because everyone keeps saying, well, he shouldn't be the heel. But I actually think he's done wonders with it, and I think revealing that hemp belt on SmackDown was it's one of the best things I've seen in ages, because not only does it really kind of underline and stamp something on that gimmick to say, we're going all in with this, which I always think is important, but it's just funny. It's just funny. Like now, in terms of characterization, Daniel Bryan's this crazy guy that went out, threw a leather belt in the garbage, and went and got himself a hemp and naturally fallen oak belt. Like, that's great. That's what I think wrestling should be. It's fun. It's stupid. It's something you can boo, even though he's technically doing the right thing. Yeah, I love stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I think it's excellent. I mean, I have to admit, I wasn't a big Daniel Bryan fan.
Oh, I think we talked about this before, yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't, because wasn't really watching when he had his big moment at WrestleMania 30. I was aware, but I wasn't watching. I came back in about just before WrestleMania 31, and he was coming towards the end of his sort of first run then. And when he came back, I wasn't that excited, I must admit. But he's definitely won me over now. I'm really excited to see him now. Yeah. And as a heel, I think he's fantastic.
Absolutely. And the strange thing as well, I don't know how true this is, again, just reports on the internet, blah, blah. Apparently, the only reason he re-signed with the company is because they were going to say, well, look, you were offered 2 years. We're going to hold you, that whole freezing the contract thing they do when people are injured. So he was like, well, I may as well stay. There's no point in me hanging around. So that's fascinating. And obviously ties into the other thing we're going to talk about, which is, I kind of mentioned it on Wednesday, but I want to talk about it now because more stuff keeps coming out. Everyone keeps going, we don't know what AEW is going to do. We don't know if All Elite Wrestling is going to be a success. It already is. Like, I'm not saying it can't die in a couple of years, but the kind of the shot that it's fired across the wrestling scene with, again, Dean Ambrose leaving, Atami left. I know Atami has said he's going back to Japan, but I still think it created somewhat of a buzz or, somewhat of a shift. And, the fact that these wrestlers now go... Well, apparently what happened is everybody found out how much Chris Jericho was making, and they went, wow, that's a legit company. It's a legit option. And that is almost as important as what it may do with ratings or merchandise or house show numbers, whatever. Creating that competition where the big dog in the yard, lack of a better term, thinks, oh my gosh, we've got, we can't be as complacent as we were before. Again, AEW may be dead in a year, for all I know. But right now, it has created enough of a wave that the situation has shifted enough that wrestlers can be confident to go, I don't want to sign that. Like, apparently on SmackDown, again, all rumours, I always like to say that because I don't know. But the rumours are, again, that on SmackDown, anyone that has a contract up in 1 or 2 years was pulled into a room and told, look, we really need you to sign something new. Let's start these discussions now. That never used to happen. I mean, it's crazy.
No, it is insane. I think they could lose a few people over the next few months, definitely.
I think, well, the way you got to look at it is this. Dean Ambrose, okay, could be a work. Let's just take it as read for now. He's gone. Itami is gone. The real funny one, and I remember seeing this tweet and being like, what? Around the Royal Rumble, Chris Jericho basically tweeted out something about Brock Lesnar being out of shape. And it was a bit like, okay, Brock's not in the best shape he's ever been in. Still looks like he could kill a dude. Like, he's not, he's not, you can say, okay, he looked better here. But I don't think anyone's going up to Brock Lesnar to go, bro, get back in the gym, man.
He's a tank. An absolute tank.
He's just a wall of man.
Yeah.
And, yeah, Chris Jericho tweeted out this weird thing saying that. And I was like, that's very weird. And as it turns out, apparently, Chris Jericho is trying to work himself into an angle with Brock Lesnar to have a match in AEW. And that Brock Lesnar, being the master negotiator that he is, as he does with UFC and WWE, has no problem in allowing AEW to come into that conversation in order to increase his price, which means, from a purely speculative point of view, one day, maybe next year, maybe this year, who knows? I don't know what Brock Lesnar's deal is. We could get Brock Lesnar versus Chris Jericho in an AEW ring. And it blows my mind for two reasons. One, whoever would have predicted that. But also, two, that is almost like the antithesis of what you would assume All Elite Wrestling to be, right? You think All Elite Wrestling is going to be new guys and indie talent and up-and-comers. And now there's rumours going to be Chris Jericho versus Brock Lesnar. That's mad. That's absolutely mad.
But, I mean, AEW, they have to get some established stars in there. I think doing it based just off of, indie darlings and up-and-comers, I don't think that will work.
I agree.
They have to have some big names. Chris Jericho is a great start. But, I mean, if they could get Brock, it'd be unbelievable. But, I mean, there's plenty of other people you could get as well. But, I mean, Brock versus Jericho would be awesome.
And also I think that's one of those things. I absolutely know that would get, surprise, surprise. That absolutely would get people involved, though. I think
you could get Brock versus Kenny Omega then.
I mean, can you imagine?
That be?
Can you imagine before 2022, we had Brock Lesnar Jericho, Brock Lesnar Omega, Brock Lesnar Cody Rhodes, Brock Lesnar versus both the Young Bucks, Brock Lesnar versus Hangman Page. I wonder what the impression of Brock Lesnar would be then, because obviously at the moment he's somewhat divisive. Some people love him, some people hate him. He doesn't want to do this and doesn't want to do that. I just have nothing but respect for the man because he's done. He went and did everything in the wrestling business that people said you couldn't do. And Brock Lesnar went, all right, well, I'm going to do it. And he's absolutely smashed it. And talking about Dean Ambrose, his match at WrestleMania with him wasn't the best, but whatever.
I mean, I think I came out of the Royal Rumble thinking Brock he's changed my opinion a little bit because he's done a few matches in the last few pay-per-views where he's really sold for the guys he's been in there with. And I just think if he did that every time, it'd just be fantastic. But obviously he doesn't. But recently he's been much better, I would say. And he's such a big attraction as well. I mean, he feels like a star when he's in the ring. And they don't have many male talents that really feel like that, I don't think.
No, I agree. I still think he comes across like a star. I just like him, though. I've always liked him. I guess because, wrongly or rightly, I kind of separate from that side of wrestling. Like, if he doesn't want to sell, for lack of a better term, or if he wants to make the most money possible, I'm like, okay, well, just, it's just one match on a card. I'm happy to move past the Dean Ambrose one, for example, when I see something like Daniel Bryan versus Brock or AJ versus Brock or Finn versus Brock. Those ones that I focus on because they're the ones that I enjoyed more. So I'm not going to overly think about, because no one hits it out of the park every time. And even if it is because, he threw a bit of a tantrum, I'm like, all right, well, CM Punk did that. Stone Cold Steve Austin did it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not unique to Brock Lesnar. Loads of top wrestling stars have done that. Although I will say, did you watch the WWE 24 that aired after the Royal Rumble where all those rumors about him hurling the bait at Vince McMahon were true?
Yeah, no, I finished watching it this morning. I started watching it yesterday. I just finished it. I love those WWE 24s.
They're brilliant, aren't they? Like they're
really good.
They're the best. Like they
you can really feel the emotion and the sort of struggle with some of the people in it. Just it feels really good. I always enjoy watching those. But the thing that I was thinking about with Brock Lesnar the other day, in fact, I think it was yesterday I was just thinking about it, where the one thing that annoys me with, he goes in the ring with, say, Finn Balor or Daniel Bryan or AJ Styles, and he pulls off these amazing matches where, you know, they look like they're going to beat him, and then he just escapes with the belt. And then he had, like 5 or 6 matches with Roman Reigns, where he pretty much just squashed him every time. Roman Reigns is a much bigger guy than all of these people. So why can't they have a decent match with Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar?
I guess it's because, and I actually agree with you, that's a really good point, but I think it's because when he takes on a smaller guy, I guess they think, well, we have to give him something, otherwise no one's going to believe this match. Whereas Roman Reigns, I don't know, you're right, that's baffling. But I think I think it comes from that way around. When he does get put against a Finn Balor, it's like AJ Styles, it's like, well, you know, what can we do? Well, we have to do this, otherwise it's not going to be believable. Whereas with Roman Reigns, because he's a much bigger dude, I guess they think, well, you can just beat the crap out of each other. And then, well, I mean, the whole Roman Reigns thing is crazy, especially when you look back on it now. It's just the whole 4-year experiment or whatever you want to call it is just, it's just crazy. And honestly, I was thinking this the other day. I think that could be one of the reasons why Becky Lynch is as beloved as she is, because it's like the antithesis to Roman Reigns, where she was meant to get booed, but she got cheered. Rather than fight it, WWE jumped on the back of it, and finally, you know, there was this person that we could cheer, and she would win things. Like even when she lost at the Rumble, she still came back and won, you know, the actual Rumble match itself.
Yeah,
and I think there's just that is missing in WWE is a babyface that comes out. You know, comes out on a babyface that we want to see coming out on top, and I think that's been represented over the last few years at WrestleMania. Where, you know, it has been, and again, I think Roman Reigns has got bad rap, but still, it is what it is. And most WrestleManias have gone off air with Roman Reigns standing tall.
Yeah, I mean, the weird thing is, I actually kind of want to see Roman Reigns come back now and win the title.
Oh, I do, absolutely.
I mean,
you know,
like, I don't believe in Seth Rollins versus Brock Lesnar that much, I must admit.
Well, that's interesting. Why not, man?
I don't, because you can see it's just going to be a similar kind of thing. It's going to be to all of the other ones with like Finn Balor and Daniel Bryan. It will be, I mean, you've got to assume that Seth Rollins will win the title, so he will just finally manage to beat Brock Lesnar in the same way that everybody else has. But he doesn't feel like a particularly credible threat to Brock Lesnar.
No, I think you're right at the moment, but I think they can. Well, what I hope they do, I should say, is I hope over the next few months they build that up. And I also think there's a lot of, you can get a lot of stock in, you know, kind of whatever you do at the end point. So if he does beat Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania and he gets a decent reaction from the fans, which I imagine he would do, and they have a really, really good match, I kind of think whatever happens before that will be forgotten about. I think the real issue they have is that Brock Lesnar now won't be on TV for ages.
Yeah, and there's a long time before WrestleMania as well, because it's beginning of April, isn't it?
I mean, we've got 2 pay-per-views to get through. This is the only thing that worries me, is apparently what we're going to do is Baron Corbin and Drew McIntyre going against Braun Strowman and Seth Rollins. Now, look, on paper, I got no problem with that, but you kind of then start jumping into the issues with, why would Braun Strowman and Seth Rollins team up? I know, I'm being a wrestling geek, whatever. But, you know, only 6 months ago, Braun Strowman was trying to destroy his brotherhood. And now, just because they shook hands, if anything, Braun Strowman should be more mad at him because he kicked him at the Royal Rumble. But, you know, and I get it. You've got a long way to go to WrestleMania. You have to feature Seth Rollins on the show. You got to keep him hot, yada, yada, yada. And we know the deal with Brock Lesnar. But, yeah, I don't know. That doesn't really, you know, everyone talks about the road to WrestleMania. I want there to be a lot of exciting things going on. I don't think that tag team match is especially exciting. But it also does tie into my whole, you know, question mark I have about WrestleMania 35. Because you've got these talents that I don't know what they're going to do with. So Daniel Bryan, I really couldn't figure out who he's going to face. Braun Strowman especially. Who the hell? Because Braun Strowman needs a big Mania match. Because let's not forget, last year he was winning the tag team titles with Nicholas. So, you know, so they have to do something. And who does Austin...
I think there's a question mark over probably, I don't know, like half the roster, isn't there? I mean, there's so many big names in there that you can't really pair them up at the moment.
Well, yeah, I mean, especially like, I mean, right now, if I give you, the WWE book, and I say, who do you want to put Braun Strowman against? I guess you could argue Drew McIntyre, but then you book yourself into a really interesting situation where To me, Drew McIntyre is Seth Rollins' first opponent post-WrestleMania. I think that's a really good feud, Seth Rollins versus a proper, evil, built-up well Drew McIntyre. But that means he can't lose at WrestleMania.
No.
And I don't believe you can have Braun Strowman lose, because I do think Braun Strowman, I still think he's great, but I think the edge has come off. So that's a match to me that seems silly to make, depending on what your future plans are.
Yeah, I mean, Braun could do with being taken away from the main event scene for a bit, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I don't. He's kind of in a holding pattern, and I don't think that it's great that he continually fights or feuds with Baron Corbin either. I don't mind Baron Corbin. I think Baron Corbin gets a bad rap. I think he's quite fun to boo Baron Corbin, and I don't think there's that many heels like that on the roster. But I don't think being in a program with him helps Braun that much. So I'm also like, well, what do we do with Braun building up to the biggest event of the year? If Undertaker is not on this show, which is the rumor, shouldn't Braun be moved into that position? I'm not saying Braun can have as good as matches as The Undertaker, but shouldn't we come up with some really interesting dynamic idea that we put Braun into, so that when he's done, you go, oh, wow, Braun Strowman's really cool again, and then you can maybe have him have a title run at some point. Because I remember a lot of people said that 2018 would absolutely be the year that Strowman would win the Universal Championship. People, they guaranteed it almost, and it didn't happen. And today...
They're all ready for it.
I think so, and that's my point. So going back to the Elimination Chamber last year when they put over Roman Reigns, but obviously had Braun Strowman run wild, didn't think we'd be talking about this at all, but while we're here, do you think they kind of missed the boat on Strowman simply because they were so focused on what they wanted to do with Roman Reigns?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. There was a point where you just thought, that's it, he's getting the belt, and then just didn't happen. And then they had the whole squash match in the Saudi Arabia one with Brock Lesnar. And that just killed it completely, I thought.
Oh, I think so, yeah. Like that whole... I don't know what... Again, because then it seemed like, okay, we do this here to build up to some kind of revenge. Braun never got his revenge. Like, Braun's revenge was meant to be at the Royal Rumble, and that was stolen away for him, and now Strowman just doesn't care anymore. It's that kind of continuity thing that makes you go, well, what happened? I don't get what the deal is.
Yeah, he's always been... And against Brock Lesnar as well, he's always been made to look like an idiot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but I would say
he loses every time.
Yeah, and also, but name me a big feud that Braun Strowman's been in that he's won. I don't think he won his feud with Roman Reigns.
Not overall, no. And probably against the Shield when they would, when it was him and McIntyre and Ziggler, they probably lost that as well. No, he generally doesn't win feuds.
No, which is weird, right? Because
becoming Bray Wyatt.
Yeah. He has, and it's kind of weird as well, because going back to The Undertaker, while The Undertaker would always have really shit feuds at first, I'm talking, sort of early 90s Undertaker, he'd always win them. He'd always win them, and I think that's something that people forget. Sure, he was fighting Giant Gonzalez and Kamala and whoever else he was fighting, but he always won. And the odd one that he didn't, but that's why I remember when Mankind came in, or Mick Foley, everybody was like, oh, he's going to feud with The Undertaker. That's because The Undertaker was out of opponents. He was out of opponents, so we don't know what else to do. And if you remember, in their first match, they allowed Mankind to win. And the reason they did that was to make you... here's a threat to The Undertaker, right? We've established him straight away. Whereas Braun Strowman, they've kind of gone the opposite way. You're right, he is just like Bray Wyatt. Cool character, got over, proper swell of fan support for a while. But aside from flipping over cars here and there, they never capitalized on it. And I understand why. Their focus again was Roman Reigns, but now it's kind of biting them in the ass a little bit.
I just think when Roman Reigns went away, then Braun was the person to give it to at the time. When did Reigns leave? What was it, October?
Something like that, yeah.
I think. Yeah, and that was when they had Crown Jewel, wasn't it? Around that time, I think, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, because it was supposed to be a triple threat match, right?
Back,
yeah, so Crown Jewel was the 2nd of November. So you're right, around October he announced it. It's meant to be a triple threat, turned it into a match for the title. Obviously, he had to get the belt off of him, and then Braun lost and Brock won, yeah.
Yeah, like in about, 2 minutes or something stupid, wasn't it?
So, again, it always makes me laugh. The idea of that match was meant to be that, obviously, he got screwed by Baron Corbin early. You hit him with the belt, and then it was like... a downward spiral, but I didn't get that. I just saw it as, Brock Lesnar whipped his ass.
Exactly. That's the thing. Every time he goes against Brock Lesnar, he just gets beaten really quickly, usually.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? It's weird.
Yeah, and he's the most credible threat to Brock Lesnar in terms of size and power. He's bigger than Brock. He should be manhandling him a bit, but then he just gets F5 like 5 times and loses.
Yeah, I mean that is the line again. Don't forget, he never, ever, ever, ever got his revenge. That's the key. And that is those little things that I think are hurting him. And even right now, if someone said, Simon Miller, you can book Braun Strowman in whatever match you want, I don't know. I don't know who I put him with. Like, I mean, Dean Ambrose, I guess, was an option, but that's not going to happen. I don't even see how that would work. I mean, Drew McIntyre again? We discussed how that wasn't work. Seth Rollins and Brock Lesnar are now busy. Bobby Lashley versus Braun Strowman. I mean, again, you know what? That wouldn't be so bad. If Braun Strowman beats Bobby Lashley for the IC Championship at Mania, I mean, it's not like a high-profile match, but at least he would have won, and at least he will walk away with the title. And I think done right, you know, WWE could capitalize on that. I do think there's something in that, but even then, I don't really think that's something people would have predicted for him, say, a year ago. I think we thought there'd be more.
Yeah, I think maybe WWE just don't see him as a guy who needs a belt.
Well, that's fair too. I think that's fair too. But again, I'd always go back to The Undertaker with that one because he didn't need a belt, right? The gimmick was enough and the way he looked was enough and the way he worked was enough. But what he did need was momentum. And that's the one thing I kind of feel like Brock Lesnar has lost, Braun Strowman has lost a little bit simply because we didn't know... You know, we didn't really know what to do with him, for lack of a better term. I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting. The other thing, I think this is kind of, I don't know. I'm not saying that WWE is flying by the seat of their pants. You know, I do genuinely think the last few weeks, especially since the start of the year, I think Raw and SmackDown have been really good. This week, I enjoyed both shows. I mean, Raw is always a little bit difficult because it's so long, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. But it is a bit wishy-washy in the sense that I always forget this when I do ups and downs. And I always sit down and go, oh yeah, but where was EC3 this week? Where was Nikki Cross? You know, where were all these NXT guys? Like, I actually quite like what they've done with Heavy Machinery now. I hate the fact they lost on SmackDown just because I'm a bit of a nerd. And I would have been fine with them becoming number one contenders straight away because instantly it legitimizes them. But that's what I don't understand. I don't understand why these people come and go. It just... I don't know what I'm being way too negative on this podcast, but it's just thoughts that I had this week. I don't really get what the idea is. And I think that comes down to heel turns as well, right? Like Elias, all of a sudden a heel on Raw. And then Rusev, all of a sudden a heel on SmackDown. And that's cool. I mean, just because I don't agree with it doesn't mean it's right. But at least tie it into a bigger angle that I can sink my teeth into.
Yeah, I mean, I think NXT call-ups they've struggled with anyway. I mean, there's been, about maybe 10 or so in the last year? And not a lot of them have done a lot, have they? Really? I mean, there's 6 all came up at once just recently, and we've not really seen any of it yet.
No, I mean, I can't think of one that actually has cut through. I mean, I guess the most recent one is Elias, right? I mean, he came on and he smashed it, but then again, he wasn't really he wasn't an NXT standout. That sounds more harsh than me. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it wasn't really a traditional call-up, was it? It wasn't like the ones they've done recently. They've just said, "Oh, these 6 people are coming," and then they keep saying they're coming, and then they come, and they pose in a mirror, and then we don't see him for 3 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. There, exactly.
Why weren't they in the Rumble? That's the other question: is why weren't they in the Rumble instead of like Johnny Gargano or Aleister Black?
And you think they would have been as well,
they're not
right?
coming up.
Yeah, I know. So, I don't get it.
Up, so
doesn't
make any sense.
No, I'm the same. That was my first thought. Is I don't, and I like those guys being in the Rumble. Aside from I sometimes get a bit worried's the wrong word, but I do think like if I am a casual fan and I've tuned back in to watch the Rumble, and I see Johnny Gargano, a guy I've never seen, just get chucked out. Yeah. I'm like, what am I meant to think of this guy again?
Or when he went for the crossbody off the top. And Joe just moved out of the way.
And that was brilliant, though. I mean, the thing is, I'm biased towards Samoa Joe.
I just think Joe just completely no-sold it completely. It's
yeah, absolutely. But Samoa Joe is one of those guys that I think eventually will leave the WWE, and he will never, he'll never be what I want him to be in WWE. And that means nothing to Samoa Joe. I'm sure he's making good money, and I'm sure he feels like, going to WWE was an absolute, sort of bookend to his career, which I completely get. But the fact that in 2 minutes on SmackDown, he was able to cut that promo that captivated me no end, made me think he's an absolute psychopath. I believed every word that came out of his mouth. I'm like, why aren't we doing more with him? Because honestly, I don't know how we do this, but I would take Samoa Joe versus Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania But you'd have to turn Samoa Joe heel and face, sorry, and don't do that. That's the worst thing. Samoa Joe is too cool as a bad guy to change. But yeah, I don't think they see him as I see him, and maybe they're right. Maybe they're right, but I just love him. He's just so good.
But again, he's similar to Braun in that he doesn't ever win a big feud.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, he didn't beat Brock Lesnar. He didn't beat AJ Styles. So it's a kind of a similar situation where it's like, I think he should have beaten Brock when he went against Brock.
I would have loved it. I mean, I wanted him to beat Styles. I wanted him to beat Brock. I always think I wanted him to get his due, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, but I think we all thought he would beat AJ Styles eventually. I think it would take maybe 3 matches, but I think we all thought he was going to win, and then he just didn't.
No, he didn't. He was almost filler, for lack of a better term. And it's weird as well because, I mean, Samoa Joe is great because he knocks it out of the park every time. So it's that classic thing where, again, this is what annoyed me with Finn Balor this week. This is the most negative podcast I've ever done. Oh, well, you got to keep people guessing. But yeah, the thing that annoyed me with Finn Balor this week, and I put my hands up, I was wrong, as lots of people on Twitter let me know. I always appreciate it. I genuinely thought the beatdown after the Brock Lesnar match was because we were setting up more stuff with Finn Balor, and it wasn't. It was just to remind you, don't get your hopes up about Finn Balor, or at least that's what I took away from it. And that kind of sucked because, even now as we sit here having a chat, Finn Balor in my head, when I kind of think what he did recently, I'm like, it wasn't as, he's all right. Whereas even a week ago, I was like, oh man, Finn Balor, here we go. We're going to push everything he did at NXT UK. So yeah, I don't get it. I didn't understand that. And I don't mind a Bobby Lashley, who the hell am I talking about? Finn Balor feud.
Finn Balor.
But yeah, when rumours come out that apparently come Fastlane, we're already getting Seth Rollins versus Bobby Lashley for the IC Championship. I'm like, all right, okay, so we're just going to job Finn Balor out again? And I like Bobby Lashley, I do. But I don't understand what the goal is at the moment. I don't understand who we're trying to push. And I don't understand what kind of focal point we have other than the Seth Rollins Brock Lesnar match.
Yeah, no, I agree. People just seem to jump in and out feuds like all over the place, don't they? But yeah, I mean, I would love to have seen Brock Lesnar versus Demon Finn Balor.
Well, that's what I thought we were going to get. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But and Finn Balor was great on Royal Rumble, I thought, because again, he's another one of those people that he's been so badly booked that you just kind of weren't excited by him anymore, even though he's fantastic in the ring. Like I just didn't really care about Finn Balor, but then all of a sudden you give him a push and everybody's excited about it again. But then that'll be the end of it, and he won't get that push again, presumably now.
I think you have to look at it like that way, right? That was his time. That was his time, and he did everything he could with it. But if you're booked to get your ass kicked afterwards, and you're not going to get your chance for revenge, you do have that stigma attached to you, as we saw with Braun Strowman as well. It's the same. Yeah. It's the same kind of thing.
For a minute, I really did think. For a minute, I thought Finn was going to win at the Rumble. It did feel like it.
Yeah,
just for a moment.
But I think that's the real shame, because even creating that idea in your head does Finn Balor wonders, because you'll buy into that moment. But then if the kind of last image you see is him back on the floor, and then it happens again 24 hours later, you've just pushed him back down into upper mid-carder status. And look, maybe that's where he should be in WWE. I'm not saying WWE is wrong. I'm just saying, from a fan watching it and kind of taking all these subconscious mental images, or whatever you want to call it, that sit in my brain, that's how it makes me feel. I instantly go, all right, that's Finn done. He had his shot. He didn't do it. What's next?
Exactly. And presumably we won't see Brock again till Mania anyway.
No.
Defending the belt anyway, because he's not going to defend the belt at Fastlane, I doubt.
Imagine he did. I'd love it. Just some random match. Brock Lesnar versus like Kurt Hawkins. Oh man, they should do that.
Yeah.
I'd absolutely love that.
We won't see that. So, yeah, it's WWE can be difficult sometimes to watch.
I can, but I do think it's been better this year. I will say that. At the moment, when I look towards WrestleMania, I get confused. One thing I do actually want to get your take on is that everything that happened with Ronda Rousey on Raw, because I felt sorry for her. I mean, Ronda Rousey does not need my sympathy for any stretch of the imagination, but I think it was a situation where she got stifled by the crowd, didn't really know how to handle it. Probably wasn't ready for booze like that. And let's face it, wrestling fans can be vicious in their attacks. They can, they can, and they are. And you need to have a certain, like someone that's always really been good at dealing with it is John Cena, right? John Cena was, and I think now, the more you kind of see it happening, especially because John Cena was kind of the first guy to deal with it, it makes you realize how good John Cena was. Do you know what I mean? Like he dealt with it. He dealt with it so well. And when you are still, and the problem with Ronda Rousey, the problem with Rousey really is the same thing that happens to football managers that are overly successful. So you take the Huddersfield. This is a very football niche wrestling for people in the UK, but there's a team in the Premier League called Huddersfield, and they were never meant to make it to the Premier League. But their manager David Wagner did it, and he was like the new hero. How did he do it? 2 years later, they started to struggle, and he left the football club. That probably never would have happened if they never got promoted. And I think with Ronda Rousey, she's so good, and she's so ahead of the curve of where she should be, that for some reason, wrestling fans, or at least a certain type of wrestling fan, and I get it's the whole Becky Lynch thing too, but, you raise the bar so high that all of a sudden you're fighting from a different position. And I kind of think that happened with Rousey. So fans jumped all down her neck like she was a veteran performer and knew what she was doing. She couldn't handle it. And that's not fair. She was surprised by it. Doesn't know the best way to deal with it. I actually thought it was quite nice the way she tried to shrug it off and failed. And then the match wasn't ideal. But I just take it as one of those things, and I don't like all these people I've seen going, "Oh, she's crap." Man, she's a human being. Let her be a human being before she's anything else.
Yeah, I think you have to remember as well, she's still extremely new to the business as well.
Absolutely.
She's not grown up in the business. She's absolutely fantastic in the ring. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And the Ronda Charlotte match from Survivor Series was one of the best matches I've seen in a long time. And one of the few matches in recent history in WWE that's made me really sort of genuinely emotionally invest in a match, because I really wanted to see who was going to win that match. It was a really great match. And I think if she goes against Becky and potentially Charlotte again at WrestleMania, I think that would do the same there. But I think getting on her case for her promos is harsh, because she's still learning. She's not even been in a year, has she?
No. She debuted at WrestleMania, right?
Yeah, wasn't it?
Yeah. No,
yeah. Then the promo she cut after the match with Becky was fantastic.
Which is, again, kind of what matters, because you were left in that situation going, this is great. This is a main event angle. And some people don't put Charlotte Flair in this. This is perfect as it is. And a huge part of that was Ronda Rousey.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I found it... I mean, it's difficult because wrestling fans they're a unique bunch. And I say that as a compliment. I say that in a nice way. You don't get a kind of passionate fan base like this that can react in such an environment anywhere else. And they can take over segments. Again, there's so much that happened this weekend, especially when you've got a smart crowd. When Dean Ambrose said, to Triple H, you got to go ask your father-in-law, and they chanted, yes, he does. Just hilarious. Elias is trying to get heat, and they're all cheering him, going, yeah, you're right. It's hilarious. It doesn't make any sense. It's absolutely, from a outsider's perspective, it looks absolutely crazy, but it is fun. And
it does indeed.
Yeah, it's like when they go to Canada and all the faces get booed and vice versa. That's kind of the fun with someone like Ronda Rousey. But again, if she's not expecting it and she's not been in that situation before and she's still learning everything else, I was like, look, it's going to happen. Again, like you said, everything she said about Becky Lynch was awesome. That, to me, is the main event of WrestleMania 35. I've come around to the whole idea with Charlotte being in it because it's not going to affect anything, really, and they'll have a better match. And if Ronda Rousey does leave after WrestleMania 35, which is another thing I don't understand why people are upset about, she came in, did a year, she goes again. All right, good. Thanks for coming. I hope you have a nice time doing whatever you're going to do next, and you'll probably come back a few times. But I think, again, from a historic point of view, I think it does make more sense to have two kind of born and bred WWE guys in that match that they can play on and hark on that for years to come. I just think that makes more sense from a marketing and business standpoint. And the match will probably be better having Charlotte Flair in it because Charlotte Flair's really good.
Yeah. I mean, we saw it against Ronda at Survivor Series. She's fantastic in the ring. You can't take it away from her. She's really good.
Oh, I think so. Again, when she entered I knew that anyway, and I've always been quite high on Charlotte, but when she entered the Rumble, I don't know what it was, but I guess it was the first wrestler I was like, right, here we go. Do you know what I mean? Now the shit is on. And I think that was her. That wasn't the booking. That was just her. The way she came, I was like, right, Charlotte's here. And I thought her facial expressions, when she was like attacking Becky after the match was just wonderful. I thought it was absolutely wonderful. Like, she looked mental. She looked absolutely crazy.
Yeah, no, she's the star of the women's division, really, isn't she? I mean, and she feels like a big deal when she enters a ring.
Yeah, she does.
Whereas some of the other women the women's division has been fantastic recently. And at the moment, to be honest, the women's titles matches are the ones I want to see over the men's, to be honest. But they probably lack a few like big stars.
I think
than Ronda and Charlotte.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you've got Charlotte, who is she can do everything. She can do absolutely everything. You've got Becky Lynch, who is now like the underdog, beloved fan favorite. Ronda Rousey is like a proper superstar, and she is, whether you want to accept that or not, she is a bona fide mainstream household name. She is. Again, I've always said this. My mum knows the name Ronda Rousey. She doesn't know what she does, but she knows she knows the name. It's kind of had that kind of, it's gotten through. But then outside of that, Sasha Banks and Bayley obviously have been marginalised a little bit, but hopefully I'm convinced they're going to win the tag team titles next month, and I think that was absolutely the right thing to do. I think it will help them no end. Yeah. So that will be good. And I do like Ember Moon. I thought had a huge upside. And again, if you haven't heard, she actually suffered an injury maybe before or at some point during the Royal Rumble. She's out for 6 months, which is terrible because I always thought Ember Moon was always over with the fans, and I think was just waiting for her big first angle on Raw to actually push her to that next level. And she obviously, we never got there. But then after that, you're right, it's a group of people that are under the main eventers and kind of need their own storylines to build them back up. I actually quite like what they did with Naomi and Mandy Rose on this week's SmackDown. I thought the callbacks to Tough Enough made that storyline make far more sense than it had done anyway. But they need to be put in a more prominent position and to have good matches in order to rubber stamp it almost.
Yeah, I forgot about Naomi. I like Naomi, actually. She was pretty good.
She is good, and she's athletic in the ring. And she's got a cool entrance. Like, it does count. Yeah. Like, it's a memorable entrance, and people enjoy seeing it. And she does have popularity, but it never really, she's never really given a chance to. Like, that feud should be, I'm not going to say better represented than it is, but I just think there's other elements that you could introduce into it that would help elevate both women, and that could happen. That could happen. Like, but yeah, I think there's a lot of people like Alicia Fox, Dana Brooke. The Iconics, and I love all of them. Like, I really do. Like, Alicia Fox, oddly, wins me over every time. Everything apart from the tantrum, her entrance and her weird mannerisms in the Rumble are cracking me up. I was like, you are entertaining.
Yes, very strange.
Yeah, but they're not put. They need to have their own storylines, their own angles to go on, so they can continue to build their whatever you want to call it, reputation, whatever.
I think it's just difficult to where they're still obviously part of the two main shows. It's very difficult to find time to squeeze in storylines for everybody, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. That's always going to be the problem, which I totally understand. But I guess because I want them to do more and they're not, it's like, well, I hope they start doing it. As we are talking about the women's division as well, dude, I got to ask you, Nia Jax, what do you think about the potential, the potential, well, I guess her beating up men. Yeah, I guess, her beating up men. What other way is there to say it?
I don't know. Thoughts? I mean, I thought when she came into the Rumble, it was strange, but I kind of enjoyed that. I thought it was quite cool, actually.
Yeah, I did. I liked it. I tell you why, because it was different. And if they didn't have a Roman Reigns or they didn't have a John Cena or whoever, I was like, well, at least I'm enjoying this. Do you know what I mean? At least this is fun.
Yeah, and obviously, we all knew R-Truth was coming in last. And I don't think anybody was really excited about that in any way. So it provided a nice shock. I thought it was good. I did wonder at the time, is she just getting punished? But
I thought that, but the way they did it, I was like, I actually think this has helped Nia Jax. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel
I think it has massively. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like she's much more. When it came to Raw, before I sat down to watch it, I was like, I want to see what Nia Jax is going to do. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So straight away, I was like, okay, well, that must be a positive to some sense because I didn't feel like that a few weeks ago.
Yeah, she feels like much more of a star now.
She does. And I think it's because she held her own with the men, quote unquote. That was the point. Oh, look at her holding her own with the men, which maybe there's a problem in that maybe. But she did. She threw out Mustafa Ali. Again, you can debate that, but she did. And she almost, she did trick Rey Mysterio, right? She picked him up and was going to throw him out, and then obviously got RKO'd, super kicked, and 619. Yeah. But I don't think it made her look bad at all. It made her look a bit like a badass, I thought. Yeah. That she had the balls, terrible term of phrase that is, but that she had the courage to, walk out there and within kayfabe, to do it in the first place, and actually hold her own. And it'll take all, and also she sold those things very well.
Yeah.
I tell you, man, I went away with I don't know how I feel about the intergender stuff going forward. I'd have to see how WWE does it and what the general consensus is. I think it is important. But in that one moment, I was like, that was pretty cool. I kind of like Nia Jax. Like that's what I thought.
Yeah, no, I thought the same. I thought it was pretty cool. I thought they did it really well. Going forward, yeah, I agree. I'm not sure I want to be watching Nia Jax versus, Dean Ambrose or something like that, particularly. Because I know it's fake, it's wrestling, but it really isn't believable in terms of a man fighting a woman. It just, I don't know.
I think the thing with it from that point of view is you don't see it in MMA, for example. You don't see it in boxing, for example. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of, if you're trying to look at it like for like. But for me, it's all about how they book it. Like when everybody was talking about Dean Ambrose potentially losing to Nia Jax, it'd be the worst thing ever. I'm like, we haven't seen it yet. I don't know. I may watch it again on paper. You could have told me about Nia Jax in the Rumble. I've gone, no, that sounds rubbish. But I saw it. I was like, well, that's quite fun.
But then back in the day, I had no problem with China beating men.
No, exactly. I didn't either. I thought that was cool.
I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I thought it was cool. Yeah, I always used to think, I like it, that's cool. A woman comes in and she kicks the crap out of people.
Yeah. When China won the Intercontinental title, I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, exactly. And the weird thing is that was what you go back and watch that now, and they're not great matches either. No. I used to think they were. I watched them the other day. I was like, it's pretty bad. But
at the time, I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, exactly. I did too, because it was different. I just like things that are different. Like, it really gets me. And again, it doesn't mean that we should do crazy stuff, and it doesn't always mean that it works. Of course it doesn't. But there was something in that, I agree with you, where I was like, all right, you've piqued my interest. And if they want to do Dean Ambrose versus Nia Jax, again, on paper, I understand the worries and the criticisms, but until it plays out, until I see how, a general audience reacts to it, I can't comment, because I do that a lot with ups and downs. Like, sometimes I may watch it and go, it's not really... it's not really for me, but look at the crowd reacting to it. Therefore, I'm in the minority here, and it's got over. And that's all. It's like the whole Joey Ryan dick stuff, right? So many people criticize it, but I've seen arenas go crazy for Joey Ryan's penis. So it's like, but you know what I mean? So it's like, how can I criticize it? If you want to talk about what is wrestling, okay, that's a different argument. But in terms of should Joey Ryan done that on this night? Yes, he should have done. Look how much people are enjoying it. And secretly, I think, when you get a crowd reaction like that, I think everybody enjoys it deep down. I don't think you can't help it. It's so silly. Joey Ryan is so good with it. Again, it's my favorite thing about pro wrestling is that really there are no rules. And as long as everybody agrees with what's happening in the ring, we can just do it. Yeah. And that's okay.
That's the key. I think if WWE want to do intergender wrestling, and it's done for the right reasons, not to punish anybody or do anything like that. And everybody's on board with it. So whoever, say it is Dean Ambrose versus Nia Jax, and he has no problem losing to Nia Jax, I think it's fine. But if it's causing problems or it's being done to, punish Dean Ambrose or Nia Jax, then it shouldn't be done.
No, I agree. I agree. I never want any kind of booking out of spite. Spite booking, I think there's a What Culture list we either did or is going up soon, which is literally about that. And it never works because you can feel the spiteness coming through the, coming through the camera, which never works. I don't think anybody ever wants that. So
yeah, as long as they do that, I think it'd be fine. I mean, I don't think they need to be, making Nia Jax Intercontinental Champion or anything like that. But especially not now they have women's titles.
Yeah, no, I would rather, if they want to do that, just introduce a new title to the women's division. I think that's the best thing about the women's division is that these days is that they there are titles, and the tag team. That's why I'm excited about the tag team titles. That builds the division, right? The more stuff you have like that, the cooler. The cooler the division feels, because it feels like an actual division. Which, brings up the other question as well. People are like, well, if Nia Jax can be in the men's Royal Rumble, what's the point of having a women's Royal Rumble? All right, yeah. From a logical point of view, that makes sense, but it's wrestling, and we can do this stuff, and sometimes it's just good to do it. And also, I don't want to see, everyone said, we'll put Braun Strowman in the women's Rumble next year. I don't want to see that. I don't. Right or wrong, I don't want to see that. I don't think that would be, to me, and maybe it's a flaw in my own character, but the way I look at that isn't fun. Nia Jax going in, it just is. I don't know why it works that way around. Maybe it's a social thing. It's a societal thing. But for some reason, one works and one doesn't. I can't answer why. Maybe that's bad on my end. Maybe I shouldn't think like that. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think it's just because you're sort of conditioned to think men shouldn't be hitting women.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It is that.
So,
yeah, you're right.
But, you know, a badass woman beating up a bloke doesn't really have the same sort of impression.
Yeah, you're right. You're 100% correct.
Yeah, watching a massive guy pound on a woman, I don't think anybody's going to want to see that.
No, and you can argue that's the kind of thing that popped the Lucha Underground bubble. Is that I swear it was Pentagon went around and just murdered a bunch of women, and I didn't like it. And again, please feel free to go, Simon, that's not very fair. Okay, it's probably not, but that's how I felt about it. It was too much. It was too much for me.
That. I mean, imagine UFC if they had women against men.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you're right. And there are certain sports I do want to see that, and that's probably why. Again, if you're going to get Serena Williams versus Rafael Nadal, I'd love to see that in tennis. So, I do think there is a reason to try and get it into WWE, but I also think it depends how it actually plays out on screen. Anyway, all said and done, I did really enjoy Nia Jax in the Rumble, and obviously, hilariously, Ronda Rousey could beat up anybody on that roster, men or women. So
yeah, exactly.
it's like that kind of.
That's what we need Ronda in the men's Rumble.
Yeah,
because she could just beat the crap out of everybody.
Well, she could literally, if they all had real fights, Ronda Rousey wins. Ronda Rousey could probably beat half the roster before anyone even laid a punch on her. Do you know what I mean? Like, because she got out of fatigue, she'd just be like, she'd be knackered because she'd taken on half the roster, which is the strange. I guess it's a strange irony with the whole thing. They actually do have somebody on the roster that is tougher than anybody else. It makes me laugh. All these people that always go, oh, Braun Strowman could. Braun Strowman would destroy, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a fight, any UFC fighter, even one in like a bantamweight. Like, bro, no, he couldn't. Like, real fighters are killers, man. They fuck you up.
I think you have to remember with Brock Lesnar is, there's that moment in they were having a match where Braun accidentally caught Brock Lesnar with like a stiff knee, and Brock just absolutely ruined him afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely.
He could probably legit kill him if he wanted to, but obviously he's not going to. But yeah, I mean, Brock and Ronda are just, well, I wouldn't say tougher than everybody, but they're up there.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why, again, talking about Brock Lesnar and his legitimacy and what he did to Finn Balor, that's why I kind of like that it ended with a Kimura. Because I was like, yeah, everybody taps out to a Kimura. Like, that's a legit move, man. You can't fight that off. That will screw up anybody, no matter what you're doing. If you see it in MMA fights all the time, and people go, well, it's not MMA. No, but it's the messages that stuff like UFC has put out there. Like, everybody on Twitter or Facebook or something has seen somebody on the front foot and then they get tapped out because they, whatever. There's 1,000 reasons. Yeah. And that's what happened. That's why I love that Brock Lesnar match. I probably should have talked about this more in the week, but that's why I loved it. The tide changed so quickly because Finn Balor made one mistake and Brock Lesnar knows about those legit holds. I loved it. Great story.
I think also the problem is that WWE don't hide the fact that Brock and Ronda have been in UFC.
No, not at all.
They fully acknowledge that. Whereas maybe in the past, I guess they didn't. They always did acknowledge it. But if they didn't acknowledge the fact they've been in UFC and they just said these are pro wrestlers, it would be much easier to beat them, or like, as Ronda now is unbeaten for like nearly a year. Largely based on the fact that she's a badass in real life. So when she gets beaten she's probably going to get beaten by Becky, say. It's hard for me because obviously Ronda could kill her, but she can't because she's in WWE.
Yeah, you're right. I think that's something I thought about the other day. I saw someone saying, oh, Ronda should win. Ronda shouldn't win just because I think at WrestleMania we need an ending where everybody's happy because we haven't had one in so long, so we need one. But yeah, there is that argument that there's two arguments. One, how do you make it realistic? Completely agree with that. But also, I don't think this is to be true. It's just a thought I had given what happened when, I know UFC and WWE is different, but obviously when Ronda Rousey did experience those UFC losses, she struggled with it. Maybe with all these boos, she doesn't really want to lose to Becky Lynch. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know people's mindsets. Wrestling is a very hard a very hard, I hate this term, but business in that sense, because a lot of it is ego and a lot of it is what you're happy to let fly. That's the truth.
Yeah.
That
and
is
Ronda
the truth.
has to lose eventually.
Of course she does. Absolutely.
She really does.
Yeah.
And I fully expect her to lose at WrestleMania, and I would like to see her lose at WrestleMania. But I think it'll be tough to get there, to be honest, because she always finds a way to win at the moment.
Yeah.
And she always looks good doing it as well. So I think you should probably just have to kind of think about her as Ronda the pro wrestler and not the UFC badass.
100%. And you do, and making that leap is hard.
Yeah, and she's a new pro wrestler as well. Becky Lynch has been doing it for countless years.
Oh yeah, 10 plus.
So yeah, I mean, in terms of that, it makes it more believable. But when you just say, "Oh yeah, Ronda from the UFC," she could probably kill her straight away.
Oh yeah, I mean, of course.
Well, you'd think so anyway.
Of course, I know, 100%.
And she's got background in judo and all of these things as well, hasn't she? So.
Oh yeah, she's a killer. What she said on Raw is probably 100% true. I could kill you, but I decide not to. I'm like, yeah, it's probably good. Probably could kill you. It's like I did a review for What Culture. You go check it out now. I went to see Fighting with My Family. It's all right. It's a decent movie. But the weirdest bit is Vince Vaughn. Is the head coach at NXT. And again, I understand it's acting, but we all know who Vince Vaughn is. So it's this is much like the whole trying to separate Ronda, MMA Ronda from wrestling. We're like, but that's just Vince Vaughn. It's like it's really hard to accept him as the head, because I'm like, but I know that he's not. He's too well known to almost take on that role. And he is actually very good in it, but sometimes your brain just won't let you make mental leaps. That's just what happens. It's just what happens.
No, because you kind of think of Vince Vaughn as like from Dodgeball.
Exactly. It's like he doesn't look NXT, but it's fun. It is. I would say if you're a wrestling fan, and it's a very easy to watch movie. But yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's good. It was all right. It was all right. Nothing special. I'd watch it once, never watch it again. But there's nothing wrong with that. Not every movie needs to be gangbusters. All right. On that note, we somehow zoomed through that hour, man. That just flew by like an aeroplane. Is there anything else you want to pimp out or sell to the audience? What a terrible phrase. Before we wrap this up.
I don't think so. I think we covered a lot of bases in that podcast.
We really, really did. We really, really did.
We jumped all over the place.
We did, which is the best ones. The best ones. I do actually think we may actually have a podcast on Monday as well for people wondering when the next one is. I don't know if that's the case or not, but another Patreon member had to shift some dates around. But, you'll pop up, it will pop up. So keep an eye out for that. But anyway, in terms of now, Tom, thank you very much for that, man. It's good to talk to you again.
You too. It's been fantastic.
It has done. And again, you can go check out loads of other podcasts I've got. I've got The Week in Gaming. That's my gaming one. Obviously, the Pro Wrestling Podcast has 2 episodes a week, so go search for that. Go subscribe. Go watch it on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/The Miller Report Rules. On Twitter and Instagram at SimonMiller316. Again, all supported by the Patreon. Patreon.com/SimonMiller316. Even $1 helps. And I think that's everything. I think I've pimped out all my wares. So that's that. Thank you very much for listening. And we'll be back very soon.